Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success and what they have learnt along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I am delighted to introduce you to Toni Lontis, who is a radio host, broadcaster, author, educator. She's all things about helping you find your voice and how to share that with the world. And so welcome to the program, Toni.
Thank you so much, Annie. I'm really delighted to be here today. Feeling a little bit worse from wear. I had my COVID shot a couple of days ago and I wasn't anticipating anything much, but gosh, my arm is sore.
Oh no. And you've got to go back for a second shot. Are you doing the two-shot technique?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh. I think I would have rathered the Pfizer, but you don't get a choice. You get what you get.
But you must have been a priority person in Australia to get that because, you know,
I've got in the background, I've got chronic aggressive rheumatoid arthritis. So, I had pretty strict instructions from my specialist about you must get this because you've got no immunity. So,
Absolutely. So, you know, you take the sore arm, you go and say, thank you for that. Wonderful that we've actually got that in the world today. Yeah. And I feel for you. I'm sure I'll be at the end of the queue, but we're all very happy that those who are immunocompromised and at most need are actually getting that now in Australia, because I know we've got a lot of listeners from the US and around the world, and we've been a little bit slow on. We've been great at managing COVID, but we've been a little bit slow on the immunizing. So we are going to get there. So, Toni, I'm really excited to unpack your story because I know, like me, you were a registered nurse, a nurse for a very long time. You're a nurse for 35 years. And then suddenly in 2018, you had a moment. How about you share with the listeners? What was that moment and what did it result in?
Well, I guess I can't talk about that moment without talking about what life had been like up until that point of time. So I was born with a congenital defect, facial defect called a preauricular sinus. And what those little nasty genetic defects do is they cause lots of infections and need surgery. And as a result of an infection combination surgery before I was 3 years old, I was left with left-sided facial palsy, which meant that I couldn't smile. The left side of my face dribbled. So think of a tiny child with a left-sided stroke on my face, and that was the beginning of life. And that resulted in low self-esteem, add to that a dysfunctional family upbringing, and life was a little tough as I entered those formative years of nursing. So I was one of the lucky nurses who got to train in a hospital setting. And of course, you were 17 when you went to stay at the nurses' quarters and start your study. And that whole living in the nurses' quarters, need a pass from the matron to go out or do anything, or even to go home. We had to have a pass from the matron. And I had a rough time. So my entry into adult life was not a lot of fun. I was shy, naive, low self-esteem, struggling in moving away from home and being away from family, and lots of pretty horrible things happened. So some sexual assaults, which then progressed to a domestic violence situation in my 20s. An unmarried mother, divorced with 2 kids from 2 different fathers by the time I was 30, And in behind that was a background of untreated depression and anxiety. And because of my nursing, I thought that having a mental health diagnosis would be the end of my life. There was still such a stigma around accepting help.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to my 40s, when life was just getting increasingly worse. And I got to the point in my life, whilst professionally I was a high achiever, doing well. I'd progressed in my nursing from working in operating theatres, scrub scout anaesthetics, to management, to coordinating statewide networks of clinicians, and quite performing well and performing high. But in the background, there was that I'm about to burst into tears. If someone finds out the secret me, I'm going to die. Into that background, and in my early 40s, I went to work one day. I had a nothing conversation with a colleague that triggered me that day, and I couldn't stop crying. I went home and thought, oh my God, what the hell is wrong with me? Yeah. After a couple of days, I finally went to my GP and sobbingly told him the things that were happening in my life. And he sat me down, and I'm so grateful to that man to this day. He sat me down and said, Toni, you cannot keep going like this. If you don't start to heal, deal, take some medication, get some therapy, you won't be here in 12 months. And he then proceeded to explain to me that my mind and my brain had just had enough, along with a complete nervous breakdown. There was a physical breakdown, and I was shattered. I went from his office that day, and despite the fact that I was in a very deep, dark space, I suddenly felt an element of relief. I finally felt like someone had listened to me and had given me some steps to take in that moment. What I didn't know in that place of horribleness, when I'm trying to navigate the health system to get the help that I needed, trying to work out how work's going to, because he was very clear with me, you must stop work. You need to heal. This is a non-negotiable. And for the first time in my life, someone had put a line in the sand and said, do not cross this line. It will not be good for you. And so I was trying to navigate all that. I'd been home for about a month. And in the background of that, I had what I thought was a really wonderful relationship. I was about to get married. I had adult children. Life appeared to be pretty good. At that time, 2 weeks before the wedding, my adult daughter, disclosed to me a history of sexual abuse from the man I was about to marry. And so that's where I ended up in 2007. And I can talk to you now about that time and place, and I can explain what it was like. But back then, I thought there was no hope. I thought there was, I just thought life was really, really bad and that I would never recover. I desperately just wanted any glimmer of hope. And the little things that my therapist started to teach me about mindfulness and breath work, those are the tiny things that started to bring me out the other side. So one of her most simple things was, when you feel like you can't go on, when you feel like there's no reason for you to be here, I want you to stop and I want you to breathe. All you have to do in the next minute is breathe in and breathe out. And I can tell you that sounds so simple, but that was so tough, Annie, just to focus enough to breathe in and breathe out. But it saved me. It got me into a practice of thinking outside my head, and that breath work started to become the foundation of the healing that would happen over the next 15 years. So as you can imagine, that was a terrible time of dealing with where I was, and then my daughter's disclosure, and it actually took me from trying to get myself help to trying to keep her safe. I'm sure the audience understands, or most of us would understand, that the trauma behind that sort of abuse is immense. And I was a nurse, so I knew how to research. I knew statistically what she was up against. She was either going to be a suicide victim, drugs, alcohol, promiscuity. All of those things were in the researched path and directory for her. And I was determined, despite what was going on with myself, that I wasn't going to let that happen to her.
Yeah.
In the moment that she disclosed to me, and there's a lot of things that came out retrospectively after that point, and I learned a lot about the abuse cycle and perpetrators and all of that. But in that moment, another pivotal thing was, as soon as she told me, we were at lunch with a friend of mine, one of my dearest friends had reached across the table, put her hand on my daughter's hand and said, things aren't right. You need to tell your mum. I had no idea what she was talking about. No clue. I thought that the difficulties in my relationship with my daughter were about her being a teenager and testing the boundaries. And I thought the issue was me. I thought that I was flawed and that I could make it better. And in that moment, I realized that this was nothing, like this was not to do with me. This was something that she had been dealing with for many years and finally had the courage to tell me. And in that moment that she told me, I thought that it was just something simple like inappropriate touching or inappropriate words or something like that. I didn't realize in that moment how bad it was going to be.
Yeah.
But the thing that I'm forever grateful for is in that first 5 minutes, I did 3 things. I sent a message to him saying, I know everything. The wedding is cancelled. Do not come home. Do not contact me. I never want to see you again. I didn't know anything. Didn't know anything at that stage, but that was my instinctive result. Yeah. I put my hand on my daughter's shoulder and said, whatever you have to tell me, I will listen with my whole heart and we will work through this together. I don't need to know now. There's some other things that we need to do. And I called the police. And I don't know what prompted me to do that, but I know from talking to the counsellors and the Child Protection Agency and the police that in that moment, of the things that I could have done in that moment, those were the three most important things to do. And I did them unconsciously. And so then we start on that path of the judicial system and the police interviews and the court process. And it was horrendous. It remains a horrendous memory in our lives. And if I was asked if I would put us through that again, I'm not sure that I could or would, Annie. The judicial system is just diabolically awful. So cut forward to a week-long trial where I saw my daughter leave I wasn't allowed to be with her because I was a witness as well as she was a witness. She was the main witness. She came off her time in the dock, curled up in the fetal position and just howled. I wasn't allowed to go to her because I was the next witness in the courtroom. And so I left her there and had to walk immediately in and give my evidence. And the barrister was, at the end of that, I was destroyed. They rip you apart. I had done nothing wrong, but they ripped apart my life. And at the end of my evidence, the women were just crying and the men were just white, stony faced, and I looked at the judge and said, "Can you I can't do this." And at that point, he just said, "That'll be enough," whatever his name was, and that's my experience.
Yeah,
that's just my experience, and that's nothing compared to what my daughter went through. So we got through that. He was found guilty. He got 4.5 years. He went to jail. He appealed, and 3 Queensland Supreme Court judges determined that there was a technicality in the court case, and they let him out.
So how long did he stay inside? How quickly?
4.5 months.
4.5
He
months.
got 4.5
4.5 years.
Yeah. And even 4.5 years, Annie, you would know from talking to many women that the lifelong impact of sexual abuse, they don't go away.
Yeah, I live in and breathe.
They don't go away.
Yeah, I'm actually, my listeners, those watching on YouTube will see I'm shattered because you're raising so many things for me. Like, so yeah, I was sexually assaulted as a child, and I didn't have that mum experience. So well done you, mum, because I know that is so hard, particularly when you had such a challenging life and here's your next chapter. And so to have that moment where you chose to do those 3 steps, oh my God, like, thank you for being an incredible human being, because I'm now estranged from my mum because my mum wouldn't believe. And so that has resulted in quite a lot of trauma, that I'm still the liar, the ruiner of family, if you don't believe the truth, then the narrative is that you must be lying and crazy and dysfunctional and actually a horrible person. And so
the thing that
it's just emotional.
People don't realise.
They've got no idea. And here I am at 3 still crying over it, right? And this was at age 11.
And you will. Like, that's what people don't understand. It just, you can heal and deal and move on, but it's still there.
The trauma is still there, and the trauma is always there, even when you do move on proactively and do turn things around. It's like this wound that, for me, I go, you turn your wound into a superpower, right? Which is why I am very passionate about
absolutely
about empowering women in their voice. And so a conversation like this is exactly what we need to do. But the trauma is still there. The effects of it and the injustice of it, it's not okay, and it is ongoing, right? So first of all, so brave of your daughter to share that. Like, I'm imagining now when she's seeing what's going down, and she has kept that secret, and love of a daughter to want their mum to be happy, incredibly brave of her. And we're all about women being able to speak out and say their truth, but it is so hard. Everything is against you to have that moment. And those, you can imagine that scene. But for you to respond in that way, Toni, I'm just beyond impressed, right? Because I don't even know if impressed is the word. It's just like, it's so
instinctive.
Wow. And to go the whole hog.
I didn't appreciate. I didn't appreciate until now I've talked to lots and lots of people. I didn't appreciate back then that I'd done anything out of the normal. It was instinctive, and I'm so grateful that was my instinct, because it could have been very different. We had a beautiful wedding planned. This is the man who used to hug me, kiss me, and tell me he loved me every single day. So to that dichotomy of trying to, but he just told me he loved me. Like, but he's been doing this.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how bad it was. I didn't understand how perpetrators work and how they deceive and lie. I didn't understand that in meeting him, I was in already very vulnerable women and perpetrators, how they are inbuilt that will find that vulnerability. So anything that I needed, he would tell me. And he was so good at manipulating the truth. Any time that she got close to telling me, he would do something that caused her to never speak. I know that she tried to tell me a number of times and that she got very close, and she was hurt again in the process because she tried to tell me. He would, behind my back, threaten to kill my son, and that's what kept her silent. But in her telling her silence that day, after we'd gotten home from our lunch, I had never seen her so light like a fairy is how I remember it. There was an energy and a almost walking on air. And I cherished that for the 24 hours it lasted, because that's about all it lasted. And the next 14 years have been just a journey. The other thing, Annie, that is important, that in those first 6 weeks, somehow in my fogged out, blacked out brain, I decided that I was going to love her unconditionally. And because I made that decision, it, as traumatic and difficult as the next 15 years have been, that helped me. I determined that I was going to love her unconditionally, and that I was brought onto this planet to love her through this trauma, that I was the only one that could do that and the only one that would help her, which is probably retrospectively, that's a big burden to put on an already fractured brain.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that saved her, Annie. It's the thing that saved her. I have never stopped loving her, even when she has spewed the most vile vitriol towards me, called into account all my parenting and everything. I would do it again in a heartbeat, because the woman that is my best friend now is the most amazing human, and she will have an equally powerful story in the future. And I really hope that we get to tell that story together, because I think that will create an empowerment and will show healing for all those daughters that weren't believed, for all those little people that weren't believed. I really believe that they need to see that some mums love their kids so much that no matter what the consequences, and I lost everything in that moment. It wasn't just about the wedding, it was about everything. All my dreams were packed into this man, and it was all shattered in an instant. But I'm here to tell you that the human spirit and a determination of how you want to live your life, that'll get you through. That will bring you out the other side. And
even if you accepted that, you would have then accepted the lie, right? So there's that temptation when the fairy tale is so close and you wanted it for so long that you then compromise. You know, so many people go, I knew there were red flags, I knew there was problems, but it's like this pull of the dream, but it's not the right dream. It's actually, it's a nightmare if you actually went into it. But it's amazing. These things are easier said than done.
I was so manipulated that I didn't see the red flags until I learnt afterwards, until I started my healing. And that's when I'm like, oh my God. And so that's why I try and talk about those things openly, even though they're hard to talk about, because there are red flags. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to miss them, you know? And like I said to you, I thought the issue in the man-wife relationship was because my daughter was so fractious and so destructive and so angry, and I thought that was my fault. I thought that I wasn't being the mother that I should have been. I thought that I could fix it, when in fact it was him all along, you know.
Exactly.
The that's the nature of the crimes, and that's the nature that we need to talk about. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation in Australia at this time. I'm so glad that Grace Tame is our Australian of the Year, because she will highlight the impacts of these crimes. I've also noticed that on social media, some of the things that people are saying to her are just so wrong. And for people to say, oh, she's lying or she's making it up, I have to shout from the hilltops, you don't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up, because what you have to go through in speaking your truth, you wouldn't do it. Like, you just wouldn't do it.
My psychologist helped me learn that too, because I've had that of, how dare you, make up these lies and tell the world. And I had a biography come out last year, which is my story. And I've had that, well, how dare you ruin families? How dare you make these lies? And you kind of go, what if that 10 or 11-year-old girl is right, and that 10 or 11 girl is now 50 and has to live that everyone because you need that belief from your mother. Other people believe you, all these other people do, but you want the belief from the person that you valued their response from. And also my psychologist said that, who in their right mind would make up a story like that? Like, particularly like for me, I'm a CEO of a big eye health charity. It risks my, thankfully we are backing ourselves to have these conversations, but there is risk. There's risk of how other people see you, how your board would see you, how that, can affect your whole career. There's risks of your family. They accept it, your children. The risk is everywhere, that it makes no sense that anyone would
do it.
Gee, this will be my thing that I'm going to get, semi-famous for
attention from.
Like, it's just crazy. It's so crazy.
I know.
But people do say crazy things. They just decide, because the truth is so painful,
so
because
hard.
It's confronting, they therefore, instead of leaning into something that is going to be really awful, disgusting, horrible to confront and process.
And it is.
It is extremely, gross. So the resistance of that means that them thinking you're making things up or lying or attention seeking, whatever, they actually think that's a better alternative, which is just crazy. But it's
not. It's just not.
Desire not to be uncomfortable is incredibly powerful. That's what it is.
It is.
But I'm
it
just,
is.
I'm so happy that we can use our voices and can share this. And so you wrote then a book in 2019 called Resilience, Memoirs of a Broken Little Girl. And so that was your story.
Yeah.
And how powerful was that story? As part of the healing journey, I'd been journaling, and my psychologist had encouraged me to write so that other people would be helped and have hope. So that was the premise that I wrote the book from. I made the mistake of sharing I should have just published the book, because it is my story and my truth, and their reaction to my story and my truth is they're locked in life, I guess you could say. So it's been a terrible few years as far as our family has been concerned, and there's still that you should be in jail because you let him into your life and you let him hurt your daughter. Wow.
And so that's the rhetoric from a lot of people. How could you not know? How stupid are you? How could you let him hurt your daughter, etc., etc.? So that has been the family response from writing the book. But the other side of that have been the emails from people going, I'm a 75-year-old man. I've just read your story and you've given me the courage to write about my own. Thank you for being brave enough and vulnerable enough to write from the heart so that people can see the damage that these crimes do. Those sorts of things have kept me talking about my story, because there's been threats from the family with regard to, oh, we're going to sue you for defamation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, that comes from their point of unhealed. They've not dealt with their own feelings around the subject. And I know that whilst I've still got lots to learn and I still have ongoing healing, I'm actually pretty, I've done enough research and therapy to understand that that's a pretty typical result, and a pretty typical and understandable result from people who want to not deal with the trauma and the fallout. And I'm okay with that. And again, I am gifted with a superpower called unconditional love, and I will see the best in anyone at any moment and disregard any negativity. And I know within my heart that I can say that I love my family unconditionally, and they can hate on me all they want. I will still love them because that's what I'm called to do, and that's really important. So in publishing the memoir, a lot of things happened. So when I published the memoir, I'm an introvert. I am shy. I have what I consider a, imperfect persona and face. I have to say that as I started my healing journey in my 40s, the nerves and muscles in my face started to the nerves started working again. So I've slowly had a increase in my ability to smile. And as I learnt to smile more and more, it's gotten better and better. So, but when I published, there was still a lot of fear and negativity in my life. And what publishing the book has done and what the universe has showed me in that journey is that if you get over yourself and get outside yourself, the universe can use you in a way that is profoundly empowering for other people. And at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. I want to show people that you are seen and heard and loved, and that it's okay to speak your truth, and it doesn't matter who doesn't believe. There will be equal amounts of people that need to hear your message, and they can only hear it from you. So just as your people can only hear your message from Annie, there are people who can only hear that message from Toni. And if I don't keep speaking, I deprive them of that healing and understanding and empowerment that is available to every human across the planet.
Yeah.
And so from the publishing of the book, I produced the audio version of the book.
Yeah.
Again, the producer had to convince me to narrate it, because I was going to pay a voice actress to narrate it because I didn't want to talk it, but she kept going, you need to do this. And she did, and she helped me through that process. There were lots of tears, lots of having breaks, because in writing a book is actually different than speaking it out aloud, and it was very profoundly cathartic and moving. So lots and lots of tears, but we got through it. At the end of it, she sat me down and said, Toni, have you ever thought about radio or podcasting? Because there's something about your voice that makes me feel safe, that makes your voice engenders a hug for the soul. And I thought, yeah, no way, no, not for me.
Yeah.
As you know, sometimes the universe will give you these little, go do this, go do that. So I was building up social media, and I had a connection with a media company in the US, and that started me wondering about podcasting. And he said to me, why would you podcast when I can get you your own show and you can stream live across the world? And I'm like, what the? Who knew? And
amazing. Wow.
Really? Like, I'm in Australia, you're in the US. He said, yeah, no worries. This is how you do it. And I learned about, paid broadcasting platforms and the power of live streaming and connecting with audience. So I did that just audio streaming for 12 months. And discovered that every week when I had to get behind that microphone for my live show, I was almost physically sick. But I kept doing it because there was something in me that said that had a message, and then the people that I talked to had an equally powerful message. So I started to learn about interviewing and discovered an immense joy and love of connecting and talking to people and bringing forward their wisdom, knowledge, and understanding for an audience to devour. So then I changed platforms and went to a video audio streaming platform and discovered a huge audience, built-in audience, and then that's formed the foundation of my business, which is, as an online broadcaster, I do co-hosted series of shows with entrepreneurs and business owners doing exactly the same thing, grabbing their wisdom and knowledge, interviewing them in a way that connects them with the audience and delivers results for them in terms of brand awareness, of business awareness, client sales, all that sort of thing. And I love it. And
your face you just transformed. You suddenly, and your volume just went up and your rate of speech went up. So isn't that amazing that through the stress of the challenge, wow, this shy girl suddenly becomes a radio host.
Who knew in my mid-50s that I would have a worldwide audience that I love so much, and the privilege I get from talking to people and telling others, particularly business people, and it's just it's magic. And so that's the foundation of what I do, and my bigger goal is to create platforms where people's voices get heard in a real and authentic way using non-traditional media, because there's a wonder about non-traditional media that gives you the scope and creativity to do something really special. And lots of big things in the planning around at the moment. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine this morning, and we've known each other for a couple of years, and I never think that I'm doing all the things that I could be doing. And she just brought me back and said, remember that shy person I met 2 years ago who was wondering what to do and how to create a business around this thing that you've discovered that you love? And she said, look at what you're creating now. And I'm glad that she did that. I think sometimes the universe puts people in your path that remind you how far you've come, because I don't ever think how I'm shooting for something much bigger than that. And I never stop to reflect. Oh, okay. So right. That's not bad for a couple of years. That's all right. And you need to be reminded of your journey so that you can empower and inspire other people. And that my business is built on inspire, empower, educate, and help. They are my fundamental core values. And any time that I'm doing those things, I'm enriched and the world is a better place, and I'm leaving an impact. You know, I've got a grandson. I want to leave a legacy. All those wonderful things. Exactly why you do what you do, Annie.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's got to be worthwhile. It's got to be meaningful, right?
Yeah. And the more people that we have living their best life, the better world we have. I think as women, we're going to be part of that conversation that takes on the big things across the world, the inequalities, the sharing of wealth and abundance. I think women will lead that into the next decade. I absolutely believe that there's a rising of feminine strength, knowledge, and understanding that will change and shift the next generations. Because I want a better world for my grandson to live in. I want a better world for him to grow up in. And any potential granddaughters, I don't want them to go through the struggles that you and I have been through. I want a better world where they're free to speak up and say their truth, where they're encouraged to live their best life, no matter what that looks like. Exactly. And where they don't feel that there's an inequality in terms of prestige and money and all the rest of it. I think that we need to head towards that equal world where the very rich are sharing their abundance with the very poor in raising the whole of humanity up and not just keeping the status quo.
Oh my goodness. I love your heart, and I love your passion, and I love everything that underpins that. And I think from those points too, you know, women, we're always pioneering in the last few decades and before. And I'm incredibly grateful to my grandmothers who were incredible pioneers in their time. And so with that, though, I think we've also come to a time of, you know, even over, I reflect back on the last 10 or 20 years for me in my career, and it's always been that, you know, you want to prove that you're good enough, you want to meet that. I think now we're at a stage that there's a real palpable movement for women to actually call out and say, yes, certain things, it's not, are we good enough, do we meet the standards, are we equal? It's actually using that voice to say some things are not okay, some things were never okay, they were just accepted. They were accepted and swept under because they were awkward, because they were hard to discuss, whereas women are actually very good at discussing those things. You know, together we are very good at actually articulating how we feel, what we feel, but we get stuck in the perfect. You know, we get a lot of the reasons we don't speak out is because of the, you know, your daughter not wanting to upset the perfect, me not wanting to upset the bubble picture of the image or the whatever, you know, and that is the lid. And once you start pushing that lid off and go, well, it's going to be painful, it's going to be messy, it's going to be ugly, but we push the lid out, which is exactly what Grace is doing as our Australian of the Year. That's saying it's not okay. When do we all decide this was okay? And when you do that and you rip the Band-Aid off, you will have mess, and at the moment that's what we have. We have a bit of discomfort, you know. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do here. But if we keep pushing forward and unite in this issue, it's to actually create a better platform for future generations.
And it's better. It's not just
creating havoc. It's rising above that to actually have a new standard of respect and what's going to work for people in the future to have happier, healthier lives, right?
I mean, it's not about denigrating men. This is a good thing for men.
Yes.
If we are able to have that respect, that's a good thing for men. And it's not about saying how bad they are. It's just about recognizing that we're not going to tolerate that behavior anymore. It's enough. And you know, I'm very much watching what's happening on social media and listening to the conversations that are having. I've actually started to there's some men that will always go, but it's not all men. I know it's not all men, but you guys that are saying it's not all men, it's now your job to equally pull out the bad behavior. It can't be just women's role. The good men of the world need to start backing us and calling out the bad behavior. And that will create a better world for everyone.
100%.
You know, women need to be part of those bigger conversations. We need to be in politics because we offer an alternate view that gives a balance. It's not about masculine or feminine. It's the balance we need. It's the balance of the conversation. It's the balance in politics. And that's what will change. That's what will change our world, and that's what will change our world for our grandchildren. And we want that, don't we, Annie? Like, no 100%. More. If it was common practice that it was so uncomfortable for men to hurt children, there would be less of it, wouldn't there?
Mm-hmm.
We have accepted that behaviour, and no more. No more should it be. If someone's behaving inappropriately around a young woman or a girl or a child, someone should be calling that out in the first instance that it happens.
Exactly. And that's the difference. That's the difference. I remember my husband used to tell me a story when he was growing up, you know, the person over the fence, someone was whacking the kid, and the response to then was, don't say anything, it's not our business, or it's, you know, just put your hands over your head kind of thing, so you don't feel uncomfortable. And that's only, you know, 30 years ago. And you go, no,
correct.
We actually need to be leaning over the fence and say, stop right now, I'm calling the cops. That is not okay.
Exactly.
Because, you know, and that's exactly it. When you notice these things, it's awkward. People will tell you it's not your business. You know, you will get criticized.
They will.
But it's actually saying, I'm aware of what I stand for. I'm aware of what I'm championing. I'm aware of, and I'm intentional of making it a better situation, not necessarily even for myself, but for other people moving forward. It's a movement of creating new societal norms, if you like, of what is acceptable. And I think that's what it is, even more than a gender issue, you know, because I've even picked up my hubby like that. He'll see something on the news and go, oh, Annie, you should be watching this. This is your thing, right? Women's empowerment. And I go, it's our thing, right? It's our, you know, and that's exactly it. It's not just a women's thing. It's actually society, male and female, calling out new what is acceptable, what's appropriate, it's a respect, it's what we would tolerate, and it all links to values and what's good for the planet, really, not just on gender issues. You can put it onto environment, business, you know, social,
onto anything. It's about that, what is right and what is balanced. That's what we should be doing. And in terms of, like, I don't know how many times I've been called a prude, don't interfere, that's none of your business, etc., etc. Now, years ago, I would never have done that. But since working through and I will call it out. Like, you know, I've been, gone out to tea, been walking with my husband and seen someone attack their female partner. And I've walked up and said, stop. No. And my husband, it terrifies him because he thinks that I will get hurt in some way. But I have no fear now. Like, there's nothing that you could do to me that would cause me to be any way fearful, just because I've been like I think having been through that level of trauma, you develop a bit of a bulletproof emotional and physical, like, and there is something about strong energy that says, don't F with me because I'm not going to tolerate it. That I learned how to put my hand up. One of my psychologist lessons was about, if you want to stop something, then learn how to go no. And I had to learn that. I had to learn that stuff. And so we've been teaching the grandson about that sort of empowerment. No, that's not okay. No, don't do that. To the point now where if he hears his mummy swearing, he'll go, Mum, that's a bad word. All 4 years old of it, he will pull her up. And we want to encourage that in a respectful way, but we need to encourage our young people to do that. If they see something, they need to be able to call it out and say, it's not okay, you know, in a way that is not aggressive, but just from a strong, empowered perspective.
And it's not personal. It's nothing personal.
No.
So stop.
No.
I don't feel comfortable with that behavior. That's the way I approach it. I go, that behavior,
absolutely,
that language,
is not okay.
Whatever. You know, even if I was at work and something was going, I'm going, oh, sorry, stop immediately. We don't allow that behavior. You know, so it's not a personal attack. It's not just you're a bit this.
No.
Or you actually rise above all of that sort of thing. And and another thing which I just love, and that's about like women like you and I who do, you know, you've been through a lot of experience. That's right. The resilience it builds in you, but it just makes you go, yes, you can't hurt me anymore. Like, seriously, it's almost like I'm numb to it. It's like,
what can you do?
I don't care. But when you've been hurt and exposed to the raw nerve, you know, you just kind of go, well, exactly. It doesn't, you know, whereas what is important is women like us, and I want the listeners to know, if this is you and you go, yeah, but I'm not you, Annie, and I'm not you, Toni, and I don't have that, I'm still back feeling terrified. I want you to be encouraged listening in that there are so many women in our tribe. Let's call it our tribe, Toni.
Yes.
Women
and it is a tribe,
global community who are actually here. So just reach out to us, reach out to any of us, because we are your
catch.
Yes,
it's become my catch cry. Is because at that time I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone and I didn't know anyone and I was introverted and quiet and broken, and I want to shout it from the rooftop. In that moment where you're feeling like there's no one, you reach out to someone, because there will be someone there. I'm absolutely sure of it. There will be someone that will listen and hear you and support you. And again, you just got to take that first step, and that first step is the scariest thing. The first step in telling your truth, calling something out, accepting help, accepting support, they're really scary. Like I came to the point of complete physical and mental breakdown before I accepted help. I don't want anyone else to get to that point. If I can help you before you get to that point, I want to know about it, because I don't want anyone to go to that point. It's horrible.
Why would we want that? Yeah, terrible. And it's risky, right? That's the reality of it.
Oh, God, yes.
It's very risky being in that position. And so our view is, why wait till someone is in the depths of despair and when you can actually stop that, at an earlier time. And most of it is actually just, hey, my view is, when you see people who are just, in their empowered state, just lean into them, just touch a bit of them, because you'll just pick up their energy and the safety and the security. And they will help you along the way. And when you're in these stages and you feel like, well, no one cares and no one will believe, there are so many who actually do, and they are here to help you. So even if you've asked before, tried something before, try again, right? And so how can people find you, Toni? How do they reach out?
So I guess I've got to two websites, radiotoni.com or tonilontis.com. Toni Lontis has lots of things like trauma workbooks and ebooks, my book, etc., etc. Radio Toni has all my information on how you can be on the show, how you can do series of co-hosted shows with me, and lots of information on online radio, podcasting, etc., etc. My easiest email is info@Toni Lontis, and I get lots of emails from people. My live shows stream into LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. There are also live shows on BBS Radio, and then the podcast and the video of the live shows is available everywhere else. Radio Toni, Toni TV is live on Binge Networks USA. So there's a tribe of 210 million people that get access to those Toni TV shows. And so I'm pretty much everywhere. If you type in Toni Lontis or Radio Toni, you will find me. And I love to hear from people. Don't ever think that because we have a public persona, and I'm sure that this is the same with Annie, that we're unreachable or we haven't got time, because I always make time for people that reach out to me. I have a small team that helps manage the messages and emails and stuff. So please just reach out. And the same for Annie. If you're watching this and you need some help in some way, if I can't help you or Annie can't help you, someone in our network will be able to. I have a huge network of people, and I very much believe that I'm a connector for other people. So people that I know may be a best fit for you. In the work that Annie does in transformational coaching, I encourage people to get themselves a coach. I have had coaches, be they therapists, counselors, or business coaches. I've had sales coaches. I've got empowerment coaches, and I've got a senior level leader coach at the moment. They keep me on track. They keep me accountable. and they give you so much help and support. And everyone needs help and support. Don't ever think that you don't need it, because you do. Me and I will both vouch for the fact that we are imperfect humans, but we're driven to show up, in the words of Brene Brown, as our imperfect self, because that's where the magic happens. 100%. Because someone watching, someone listening will go, gosh, I'd really like to do what they do. How do they do it? Well, we're here to help. An empowered humanity is the humanity we want. And the more people that we help to live their best life, follow their passion, live with their life in flow, the better life is for everyone. So this is not about us. This is about a better life for everyone, and sharing the wisdom that we've both gleaned from a lifetime of healing, coping, and recovery effectively.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh my gosh, I could talk all day, but we're nearly up to an hour. So I am going to have to let you go. Thank you so much for being on my program today, Toni. You are just so inspirational, because you're a survivor, but you are a mainstream thriver, right? You have just gone and done what would be seemingly impossible. And that's what people do, you know, in all of my interviews, show that situations look like they're impossible, and you actually just go, enough, believe in yourself and back, and have those moments when it makes you feel ill. Have those moments and you go, oh my gosh, what would people be thinking? Prove them wrong, make it your superpower, follow your purpose in your heart, and look at the incredible, when you lean into what your purpose is, look at the evidence, and you're a great example of that, Toni. So keep sharing your word. Massive
thank you,
and all the best for your future success.
Annie, thank you so much. Such a privilege to be on your show today. Thank you for the invite. I need to have you on my show as well, which has just reminded me to make sure I send that invitation to you shortly.
It'll be an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Toni. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes, and of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.